of 75% from the previous quarter with just $2 billion funding in Q1 2023. This could very well hurt the economic growth of India. The situation is worsening as only 271 Indian startups raised funding in the first quarter of 2023 compared to 561 last year. Once a booming sector, it is also seeing
more than 500. I could go on. Trell has fired more than 300 employees. Lenko has laid off at least 200. Meesho has sacked more than 150. Blinkit has fired more than 1,500 employees. MPL, 100. Front Row, 150. And OK Credit, more than 40 employees.
Byju's reported revenues of over 2,280 crores, against which the losses were 4,500 crores plus, which means for the financial year ending March 2021, for every 1 rupee earned, Byju's lost 2 rupees. And yet, its valuations continue. Ballooning, out of control losses lead to a floating valuation at the same time. Viewers, something's wrong here. Let's debate.
Why are Indian startups failing? That is a question in your mind, and this video is a solution for it. So before getting to the answer, we have to see the story of Portugal. What comes to your mind when you hear the word Portugal? Maybe Ronaldo and football. But do you know that back in the 1990s, Portugal was facing a drug issue? Around 1% of the population were addicted to drugs. For every 100 people, there were at least one person using drugs. This is how critical Portugal was. But how did they solve this problem, and how did they get out of such a big issue? And that's what we're going to see in the story. So back then, Portugal was governed by a dictator, and they were isolated from the rest of the world and from the Western culture. So only in 1974, Portugal got their freedom from dictatorship, and that's when the people were exposed to the newfound freedom and the Western culture. And this was the time when Portugal population was increasing, and also the people who were fighting war in other colonies, in Portuguese colonies, started to come back to their home country. And this increased the population and also led to an economical crisis. And the bigger thing is, there was a time when cheap drugs from Afghanistan and Pakistan were flooding into the European market. When other countries were able to fight with drugs, Portugal wasn't even ready to do that. And that resulted in around 1% of the population to consume drugs. And Portugal was in a very, very critical situation, because for every year, there were at least 300 to 400 people just dying because of overdose of drugs. And every year, 1,000 people were affected by HIV, and that also was because of drugs. So Portugal was in a very, very critical situation. But in 2001, everything started to change. Portugal, which was once the capital of drugs in Europe, started to become a role model for other European countries in controlling and eradicating drugs. A country which was facing around 300 to 400 deaths every year brought it to around 50 to 60. And they became the country which having lowest death tolls due to drugs. But how did they do it? How was the Portugal government able to do it? And the simple answer is market research. Portugal government was like any other government. They also took the same steps like any other government would do. Like they gave strict punishments, they imprisoned people. Most of the citizens were in jail, and they gave harsh punishments, thinking that this would solve the problem. But the problem wasn't solved. So that's when the Portugal government started taking a different approach to the problem. So what they did was, they formed a team not of law enforcement officers, but a team of physicians, doctors, and medical people who saw this problem not as a criminal justice problem, but as a health problem, an epidemic which can only be solved by medicine and through medical ways. And the government made a team which was under the leadership of Dr. Joao Gallo, who was a physician by the way, or a doctor by the way. So what he did was, this team went to all over the world. They went to many countries. They met the different types of people. They met lawyers, social workers, doctors, and other psychologists, and many other people. And they started to collect a lot of data. They started to do the market research. In business terms, we call it as market research. They did that. The government did that. And this team came out with a plan, and this plan was a revolution, and which made the other European countries and even big countries like America to look back into such a small country. And that plan was to decriminalize all drugs. Because that team didn't want to see these people using drugs as criminals, but as patients who needed treatment. And by this, Portugal, which was once the worst country facing such a drug issue, became a country which was near equal to drug-free. And they were able to do it because of a proper market research. What are the lessons that we have to learn from this story? The first lesson is proper market research. The reason why most startups fail is that you don't have a proper market. They follow the same traditional method that other companies do or other startups have been doing for such long years. But you have to do a proper market research to know what is the need of your customers, what is the need of your users, what can change or what can solve this issue. Because until and unless you do a proper market research, you won't know what is the need of the market, what is the need of your customers. So as a startup, the thing that you have to do is take a proper market research. And Portugal could have been like any other government. They could have followed the same method that other governments were doing, that other countries were doing, because all other countries were following the same method. They were giving punishments, they were imprisoning people, they were putting strict laws, having law enforcement officers to take care of the situation. But nothing changed. The problem wasn't solved. As entrepreneurs, your work is to solve problems. So here the problem wasn't solved. The countries couldn't solve the drug issue. They couldn't even stop people from using drugs, nor bringing people into rehabilitation center. But Portugal took a different approach. They took a team, they made a team, they made them to do market research and find what is the problem and how can we solve it. And that's when they had the idea to decriminalize all drugs, and because of that, people coming to rehabilitation centers increased. In 1999, it was just 6,000 people. And after 2001, in 2008, you see there are 30,000 to 40,000 people in rehabilitation center. People using drugs for around 1 lakh, 2 lakh. But that reduced just to 20,000 to 30,000. And that was because Portugal did a proper market research. And that is the first lesson that we have to learn. As a startup, we have to have a proper market research. And as business students, we have to know that when we create a startup, the first thing that we have to do is have a proper market research. And the second lesson that we have to learn from Portugal is that to think different. That's what Steve Jobs said, think different. And that was the reason why Apple was so successful, because they thought different. They was out of the code. They had an idea which was out of the box. Other people were doing creating the traditional button phones. Apple made a smartphone, and that became a revolution. So to create a revolution in your industry, in your market, the first thing that you will do is to think different, to think out of the box, to do something which other people won't do. So you have to come out of the similar ways that you've been following and do something different. Take a different approach. Take a different approach to solve the problem. There's nothing that you have to lose. So you can take a different way and find whether you can solve the problem. If the problem is solved, it's a win-win situation. If not, there's nothing that you're going to lose. So take a different approach. So think different and solve your problem. And the third lesson that we have to learn is that value feedback. Maybe if the Portugal government wouldn't value the feedback that the team had given to them, then Portugal wouldn't have solved the problem. Because decriminalizing drugs is not so easy. Many of the opposition leaders would have opposed it. The party members could have, the party members of the government could have opposed it. Even big leaders could have opposed it. But the government was steady that they valued the feedback from the team and they made that happen. They followed it and they made a law and even passed it as soon as they got the feedback. And that's when Portugal was able to do it. They were able to decriminalize drugs, and because they valued the feedback, they were able to do a revolution in that industry. So being a startup, the thing that you have to do is to value feedback. Maybe it's from your users, from your customers, or from your friends or family or relatives. Whoever you think is valuable enough to give a feedback, value it. Get it from them and try to implement in your startup or in your industry or in your business, whatever you do. So that are the 3 lessons that we learned. So build a strong team, have a good market research. So for a startup, the things that are very important is have a good team. In last video, we saw with the TAPA, that DARPA case study, we saw the need of a teamwork. So build a strong team, have a good market research, think different, take a different approach to solve the problem, and then value feedback that you get. So when you launch a product, try to get a feedback. Taking this video, I want to get a feedback, like what are the mistakes I've done, and when I correct it, I could make even more better videos. So that's how we have to value feedback, and these are the big things that if we do, startups will start to face success. So thank you. Have a nice day.